If you want to model complex structural behavior, you should try Marc. Marc is an advanced nonlinear finite element solver. By nonlinear, I mean three things: large shape change, complex material response, and contact. All of Marc's capabilities are directly accessible by its preprocessor, Mentat. Fracture is a challenging phenomenon to model that often requires using an explicit solver, but Marc can model fracture with its implicit solver. Marc has excellent remeshing capabilities and can even delete elements. Deleting elements is helpful for modeling machining processes. Marc can also model sheet metal forming, forging, and welding. Marc comes with a material library that can handle metals, rubbers, plastics, and composites, and you can extend its capabilities by writing user subroutines. This video is part of a series on how engineering students can get started learning simulation. In this video, I will tell you about how Marc is used in industry, how to spend your first hour with Marc, and how to learn more. Let's go! I just mentioned a few sources of nonlinearity, but let me give you more details, because nonlinearity is what Marc is built for. The first type of nonlinearity that we'll talk about is material. You see how this pipe is being deformed permanently? Well, it's not just undergoing elastic response, it's undergoing a permanent plastic deformation. To resolve that, we can't just use a linear solution, we need a nonlinear solver like Marc. While we're here, let me point out an interesting feature of Marc. You see how the mesh starts out as relatively coarse, but it's very fine here in these regions where we have a lot of complex deformation occurring. Marc is able to adaptively refine the mesh to give you the small elements that you need to resolve complex stress fields. Another source of nonlinearity is large deformation, especially if it leads to distortion of a shape, as we see here. And contact is a serious and challenging source of nonlinearity. Marc is often used in design of seals, and Marc can model the numerous manufacturing processes shown here. Note that Marc can integrate structural and thermal simulations. I'm going to give you an overview of the Mentat user interface. We access tools using these tabs at the top of the window, and they take you from the start to end of the simulation process, getting to generate jobs and view your results. This is the model browser, and it shows things like your mesh and the different loads that you're applying to the model. This bar lets you adjust the camera. What do you see in the viewport, from what angle? This lets you do picking. This button completes selections of items that go in lists, which is something that we do quite often in Marc. The buttons here let you toggle the visibility of items in the viewport, and they let you switch between things like viewing the viewport versus plots or tables. Now I will show you how to access the help on Marc and Mentat. Remember that Marc is the solver. The background theoretical information for Marc and the details on the solver inputs and outputs are given in volumes A through E and the verification guide. To learn Mentat, the preprocessor user interface, you'll use the user's guide. There is also a set of tutorials for a couple of advanced features. Feel free to take a look at that and see which are relevant to you. We'll go to the user's guide now. The Mentat user's guide is basically divided into two parts. These sections up here give you background information on the basics of Mentat and how finite element analysis works. But if you're like me and most of the engineers that I know, you learn by doing, and Mentat gives you 134 exercises that you could work through. Now, you'll only need a small fraction of these, but you get to pick out the ones that are the most relevant to what you're working on. For anyone getting started using Marc, I would suggest doing the first 3 exercises, plus any others that seem to cover topics that are relevant to your application. The example that I have shown in the viewport simply comes from this exercise here, and it shows this HSA suspension arm in a real hard drive. Something that I think is really cool about the tutorials that come with Marc is not just that they give you clear step-by-step instructions, but they also include a copy of a script that does the exact tutorial workflow. Here, let me show you how to do that for the tutorial that we'll be illustrating today. So I simply click Run, and I click OK in this dialog box, and then I'll click Start Continue. And you see that Mentat is now generating my model. It created the geometry mesh, applied a pressure load, and it is running the simulation, and it does the post-processing. Two reasons why these scripts in the examples are so helpful. One is that it gives you a quick overview of what the tutorial will actually include. And second, if you're doing a tutorial and you get stuck, you're not able to get your results to match, you can open up a second Marc session, run the script, and then compare your model with the model that is given. That's a great way to identify any errors that you might have made in the modeling process. Let me give you a few tips that will help you have a smooth experience as you work through this Marc tutorial. First, I'm going to try to unite these bodies, but I'll have a problem. So I click the Unite button, and I click on the two bodies, but they don't get selected. The reason is that I had switched away to another window, and then switched back. This button is now highlighted. This is the button that lets us pan and rotate. I'm going to click to disable that, and now I can select the two bodies. Next, to complete my selection, the tutorial says that I have to push this button. And I think it's just worth mentioning what this button means and why it looks the way that it does. This button means end a list selection, and we often have to pick lots of lists of things in Marc and Mentat. If you are writing Mentat scripting code and you want to end a list, you write a £, just like is shown on this button. And actually, wherever you could push this button, if you were to type the £, into this window and hit enter, the same thing would happen. My last tip is to simply be conscientious as you're building the model. There are a lot of steps and it's easy to miss one. So you really do need to read every word in the tutorial. We have callouts here that show how to get to the general menus, and here's what they should look like, but you also have to do some clicks that are indicated in the body text. In this case, you would not just need to make the menu look like what is shown here, you also need to click this button and set the job results. But I'll let you go through and review the details on your own. But I'm sure that if you read through the instructions carefully and really are committed to learning Mentat, you'll be able to do the tutorials, no problem, and be able to get some really exciting results. If you want to get good at Marc and Mentat, where do you go from here? One great option is a set of YouTube videos that are linked in the description. Those are made by Shank Kulkarni, who is one of my colleagues here. Of course, it's pretty simple to keep moving with learning Mentat. Again, you just go to the user's guide, and there are lots of exercises available for you. And again, to learn the theory of Marc, you'll want to look at the different volumes of the manual. The manual includes detailed explanations, equations, figures, whatever it takes to help you understand what the Marc solver is doing and how to make the most of it. And we have Marc courses on our e-learning site. The link for that is in the description also. Thanks for checking out Marc with me, and I hope that you actually try it yourself. And if you're a student or a professor, there's no reason not to. You can get it for free at the link shown in the description. There is also contact information for how we can help academic users. Reach out to us if you would like help, especially help teaching with Marc or any other simulation software that we offer. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.